This is a video on how to complete your task-based simulations. Now I'm using MACC 530 as an example in this case, but it can be equally applied to MACC 570. So let's go on and talk about task-based simulations. Now, according to the AICPA, task-based simulations are condensed case studies that test accounting knowledge and skills using real-life work-related situations. All task-based simulations are intended to assess knowledge and skills that are appropriate for and I will add this, entry-level CPA. And what you see here is a schedule published by the AICPA regarding the examination structure by section. And right now we're concerned with, if you're taking BEC 530, we're concerned with the BEC section, Business Environment Concepts. And we're also, if you're taking MACC 570, we're also concerned with regs, the regulation section. So we're just going to take a look at those. Now, if you take a look at Business Environment and Concepts and the Reg section, you're going to see the task-based simulations appear within both of the exam sections. Now, in the case of BEC, there will be 4 task-based simulations, and they are going to represent approximately 35% of your total grade. So they are not insignificant. They are a significant portion of your grade. And if you take a look at the way the testlets are administered in BEC, you'll have your first task-based simulation. You'll have your first testlet as the third testlet of your BEC exam. There'll be 2 task-based simulations. And then there'll be a fourth testlet of 2 more task-based simulations. Now, let's talk about the regulation side. The regulation side is there's going to be 8 task-based simulations, and those weight at 50% of the regulation score. So again, this is a significant amount of your grading, and what it really tells you, both for BEC and for regs, task-based simulations are an essential skill to practice, and the 10 that we give you in each course is what I would consider simply the minimum, the starting point. You really want to practice more than is required in the course. Of course, we're not going to ask you to do that as part of the course, but this is something, if again you want to pass the exam, you need to practice. And also with the 8 task-based simulations, after you do your first 2 testlets of 38 MCQs apiece, then you go on to testlet 3, which presents 2 task-based simulations, then testlet 4, which presents 3 task-based simulations, and then testlet 5, which presents 3 task-based simulations. So again, task-based simulations, or TBSs, are an extremely significant portion of your exam. Now let's just step back for a few minutes too and talk about how completing task-based simulations impact your course grade. Okay, here we have MACC 530 and MACC 570, and let's take a look at MACC 530 first. You can see here there are going to be task-based simulations totaling 240 points. There's going to be 10 task-based simulations at 24 points each. So if you do the percentage here, that means 24% of your entire grade is dependent upon successfully practicing the task, at least the minimum of the 10 task-based simulations. So it's not the majority of points, but 24% can basically, from a graduate grading point of view, can be the difference literally between an A and a C. So you need to be careful. Okay, if you take a look at MACC 570, the task-based simulations are 300 points, or 30% of your total points possible. So again, they're a significant portion of your MACC 570 grade. There's going to be 10 task-based simulations times 30 points each. So again, keep that in mind. The task-based simulations are critical to the CPA exam, and they're also extremely important to uh, earning a good grade within your two graduate courses. Now let's go on. Now let's go on to the subject matter of where we go about now let's go on to the subject matter of our task-based simulation grading rubric. And if we take a look at this excerpt of the TBS rubric from our class syllabus, again, I'll go over this very quickly. A significant portion of the exam is task-based simulations, and we talked about that just a few minutes ago. As with the aforementioned multiple choice questions, and in my syllabus I talk about the multiple choice question rubric before, so that's why I say, as with the aforementioned MCQs, the key to successfully preparing for the CPA exam is to practice the TBSs. And again, you've heard me say that before many, many times. Okay, now during the course, students will be assigned 10 TBSs that will total 240 points if you're MACC 530. If you're MACC 570, it'll be 300 points. So that will total 240 points. I have to move my 240 points towards the student's overall grade. There will be 10 simulations worth, in the case of MACC 530, 24 points each. In the case of MACC 570, 30 points each. Now, each TBS completed with a score of 75% or better will receive 24 points. In the case of MACC 530, if you're in MACC 570, it'll be 30 points. Scores between 50% and 74% will receive, that are submitted, final scores between 50 and 74% will receive 12 points for MACC 530. In the case of MACC 570, it'll be 15 points. Okay, scores of less than 50% will receive 0 points. In other words, you don't get any credit for completing that particular TBS. TBS is submitted after the due date will receive 80% of the points earned. Now, it should be noted, and this is extremely important, it should be noted that the student may continue to repeat the simulation until they achieve a score of 75% or better, as long as they submit the work before the simulation due date. So if you get a 44 the first time on your simulation, all is not lost. You can repeat that simulation, plus you can review the solution, the answers to the simulation, then repeat it again. If you do that, you're bound to increase your score. It may take a couple of times to reach that 75%, but the key is to reach that 75%. Okay, the highest score achieved for all your attempts on the TBS will be used to award your grading points. Okay, here's something else that's a little bit different that some of you may not be used to, but students will self-report the results of their efforts on their TBSs. Each student will be provided a link to a TBS simulation activity report form in the classroom, the Blackboard classroom, on which to report their work. The student is required to complete the form and submit it within the Blackboard classroom by the TBS due date, and we'll see how that works. Now, some students tend to get, are kind of, well, you mean we self-report our efforts? And the answer for grading, and the answer is you're graduate students. So we assume a higher level of, just a general level of integrity and so forth. Also, I will tell you, on the other hand, I do receive for each student a summary of TBSs completed, MCQs completed, and so forth. So I can, and on occasion, do check those against the reported results to ensure we maintain the integrity of our course. Now the question becomes, well, okay, now I'm going to have to do these task-based simulations. Where do I find them? Well, pretty easy. I'm going to an excerpt from our from our syllabus, and as you remember, I have a class outline which is split up into 2-week segments. This particular class outline comes from our MACC 530 syllabus, and it's for the weeks beginning June the 12th and June the 19th. And again, it has the classic information in here that we had before. Topics covered, the tasks to be completed during those 2 weeks, the videos to be reviewed, the classes to be attended, and the graded assignments. And what you can see is down here at the bottom, we have this area that I just circled called task-based simulation. And here it says task-based simulation 40060. Now that we've looked at the rubric, let's talk about where we would find the task-based simulations. The most obvious place to find our task-based simulations is within the class syllabus. This is an excerpt of the 2-week period of June the 12th and June the 19th, the weeks beginning for our MACC 530 class. And again, the assignments follow the typical pattern: topics covered, tasks, then the task will be reviewing of the videos, attending class, and performing graded assignments. Now, basically these assignments can be found in the syllabus. Also, at the beginning of the 2-week segments, you're also going to see them in our class announcements. You're also going to see that in our class email. You are also going to see the tasks, as you see right here, will also be listed under our class tasks and assignment tab within the classroom, and will also be included, at least the task-based simulations will be included in the task-based simulation activity report. Now, in order to find the task-based simulations, you go down to the item that says task-based simulation. Now this one's hacked up a little because I inserted another task number here just for illustration purposes. So this says task-based simulation 40060, assigned on June the 12th and due on June the 25th. So now you know what task-based simulations are assigned and what particular simulation is assigned, when it's assigned, and when it's due. Now let's go and talk about how we actually complete a TBS. What I've done is I've signed on to Surgent, and I'm at the top of the Surgent dashboard. Now there's a couple of ways to approach how to actually approach a task-based simulation. Let's try the first one here, and what I do is I start out at the top and I go all the way down past my different categories 1 through categories 5, and now I see an item called Selective Study Session. I click on that button, and now what happens is it gives me the selective study session for all the individual categories. Now in this particular case, as I mentioned, with multiple choice questions, it would be important to pick the correct category boxes, but with task-based simulations, we do not have to worry about that. So what I'm going to do is I'm not going to worry about checking or unchecking the boxes for task-based simulations. I'm simply going to click Next. I click Next and I get my 2 drop-down boxes. On the right-hand side, I go and I select now All, and then it's going to come back, it's going to change anyhow, but then I go ahead and it says, where it says 5 questions, I select the radio button, and instead of doing 5, 10, 25, 50 questions or a specific question, I'm going to do one simulation, but in this case I've been assigned a specific simulation to perform. So I'm going to pick that. Now you notice what happened here is, what simulation do you want to jump to automatically came up when I said specific simulation. Now, you may not remember, but the simulation number that I said I needed to do was 40060. So I put that number in there. So session type and duration, I say again, specific simulation, and then it asked me what simulation do you want to jump to, and here that would be, in this case, right off of the syllabus, 40060. So now I begin my session. And I am taken now to a task-based simulation where I can go through the answer process. Now, I'm not going to go through this in detail right now. I'm just going to show you, I'm going to pick some information here on this task-based simulation and just make some changes to see what my grade's going to be. You notice I'm picking these different lines regarding regarding this report. I have to determine whether I leave the line in, take it out, or modify the line. And all I'm doing right now is exactly that. And then I say choose as I choose the line. And you can see it actually chooses the text, or it actually changes the text. Market participants, I'm going to say delete text. I don't know, just for grins. And again, in order to make it stay, I choose it. Okay, at an entry price, is entry price right in this? I'm going to say, no, exit price. I do choose. And again, you can see it changes from an entry price to an exit price. Down here then, income-based approach based upon market prices, other informations. I take a look at my choices here, and in this case, I'm going to say the present value of the future stream of net cash flows, and again, choose, and you can see where that changes that item. Market-based approach, the cost to acquire or construct comparable assets. I'm going to leave that alone, and in order to do that, I said, okay, I'm going to leave that alone, and I said keep the original text and choose. Okay, and then after that, weighing the cost approach based upon historical cost. I'm going to say historical cost adjusted for inflation. Choose that. Okay, and after that then, weighting the three approaches evenly, is that a correct statement? And again, that's dependent upon some of the information in this problem. And I'm going to say basically weighting, I'm getting using a non-weighted independent appraisals, which is going to be wrong. I know that. I choose that, but you can see where I changed it. And then a mom and pop, we estimate the fair value of the mom and pop shop to be at least, and I'm going to say $1,302,520 and choose that. Okay, now I'm done with this particular simulation. So all I need to do now is submit the simulation. There you see the number, 40060, submit simulation. And now I'm going to be taken to my results. Not so good. I got a score of 27%. In other words, I got 27% of everything correct. All the items here that are marked in red were items that were required for me to either keep or change or delete, and all these items marked in red are incorrect. So you can see I got all these items up here incorrect. Down here I got the income approach based upon the present value of future stream of cash flows. I got that item correct. I got the next couple of items incorrect, and I got the last item correct. And what happens is it gives you the reasons why you should have selected these the correct answers. So again, you can review the simulation and say, okay, now I understand what I've done wrong. Let me go and try it again. Now, down here, you have to be a little careful because it says down at the bottom, take another simulation. If you want to take the simulation again, you do not want to take another simulation. What you want to do is you want to go back up to the top, and then you want to click on Exit Session. That'll close this session that you just completed on this simulation. You go and then you go, do you really want to exit the session? And the answer in this case will be yes. Okay, now I've exited the session. Now I want to redo that simulation, so I can come back down here, and I'm going to show you a different way to get into the simulation. The last time I said selective study session. Now there's another way you can get into the simulation, and that's by these little blocks down here. All these little blocks represent separate simulations. The ones that are darkened are simulations that I've done before. As an example, I've done simulation 40021. I've had 3 attempts at it. My average score is 40%. My most recent score is 0%. So what I need to do is I need to find the simulation that I just completed. So I look for simulation 40060, and there it is, 40060. Now you notice I have 13 attempts here, so I've used this as an example. But what I can do now is I can click on simulation 40060, and it'll take me directly back to the simulation, and it's reset just as if I never took it before. And I can go ahead and then do the simulation again. When I'm done with the simulation, I'm going to submit it. Now this is going to give me a practice. Well, this will give me a 0 score. But again, when I get enough score to hit 75%, I'm still going to exit the session because that locks my session score in when I hit exit session. So I hit that, and then I'm ready to go on to my next simulation or whatever I want to do. Now, if I want to see the results of the simulations that I've attempted, in other words, how many have I attempted and what's my highest score, what I do is go up to this little place up here with the little reading guy. I click on that, and I go to Simulations Result Log. Now, in the case of the multiple choice questions, when I want to look at my progress there, I look at the progress report. But for simulations, I look at the session's result log, and I'm going to click on that, the simulations result log. In order to review the results of my task-based simulations, what I want to do is go back up again to the dashboard. And I want to select this little guy. It looks like he's reading a book. And then in order to look at the results of my TBSs, I'm going to select the session results log. Again, session results log. When I click on that, I get the following. I get a completed sessions log report. And the first thing I have to make sure is that I am looking at the completed sessions log report. So if I'm going to choose one of these two, it's going to be completed sessions as opposed to paused sections. Also, I'm assuming right now that I tried problem or simulation number 40060, and I attempted it 3 times, and I attempted them all on June 3rd. And I kept working the problem until I finally got a score above 75%. And what you can see here again is you can see the evidence of my work on this simulation. You can see the simulation on June the 3rd, the time I did the simulation, the second attempt, and the third attempt. Also, you can see the amount of time I've spent on it and the score involved in its simulation. My first time around, I scored 18.2%. Second time I did better, 72.7%, but not quite 75%. And I don't want to settle for 50% of my grading points. So I go on and I try again, and I get 90.9%, which is obviously in excess of the 75. So now I have a record of what I've done on this simulation, 3 attempts, and my highest score is 90.9%. Now you'll notice it says simulation type. It simply says simulation. It doesn't refer to the simulation number itself. In order to verify that, you simply need to click on the view link in the completed sessions log, and it will take you to a detailed description of the simulation session that you completed, or these 3 separate simulation sessions that you completed. For example, this is what happens when you click view. Now, what it shows here is I only did 1 simulation in that session. You should only do 1 simulation in each session. It tells me, though, the simulation number, which would be 40060, so I know I have the right simulation and I can prove it. In this case, the description, financial management, and the score I got here was, and this, by the way, was from category 3. And this is financial, basically from the financial management section. And my score again was 90%. Now what I can do also is if I want to review that entire detail simulation, let's say I got a lower score and I wanted to try it again, I could hit review all and it'll take me right back to the simulation. Now that I have the information regarding my simulations, I need to be able to report this information. Sorry about that. I need to be able to report this information back to the Blackboard classroom. So on the next slide, we're going to go back into the Blackboard classroom. And what we do is we go down to the the assignments and tasks section, and we go to the week's beginning tab, which whatever the simulation pertains to. Now I'm using the week's beginning June 12th and June 19th tab, so I click on that tab, and it's going to take me to this this landing site right here where it says submit your task-based simulation. In this case it says number 40064 and 4055 here, and they're due on June the 25th. And indeed those are the assignments, but remember I'm going to be substituting right now. I'm assuming that I've only had to complete 1 task-based simulation. That was number 40060. So in place of these 2 numbers here, you can just substitute mentally 40060. Okay, so now I'm going to click on the Submit Your Task-Based Simulation link right here, and I go to the next sublink underneath that, and what this does is this gives me the detail information for my task-based simulations. It gives me the due date, the amount of points possible. Now remember, since there were 2 simulations here, that would be 2 simulations times 24 points apiece. That would equal 48 points. Now notice here it says each TBS completed with a score of 75% or better will receive 24 points. So if you complete both 75% or better, you get 48 points. Scores between 50 and 74% will receive half of that, 12 points. Scores of less than 50%, 0 points. And again, this is right out of the class rubric. TBS is submitted after the due date will receive 80% of the points earned. And this tells you, again, you will receive up to 48 points, 24 points per TBS for submitting the 2 TBSs with scores of 75% or higher. It talks about the fact that you can continue trying to improve on your TBS in order to hit the 75% level. And here it talks about the self-reporting. Students will self-report the results of their efforts on TBSs by accessing the linked task-based activity report form from this site. The site is required to, the student's required to complete the form and submit it to the site by the due date, in this case June 25th. So here's my form right here. I'm going to click on the TBS Task-Based Simulation Activity Report, and this tells me it's for the week beginning, in this case beginning 6/12 and 6/19. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to click on that report, and that'll bring up a task-based simulation activity report form. And here's an example of the form, and I've already completed it, And what you can see here again is the simulation report is for the weeks beginning 6/12/6/19. You won't have to fill that out. That's already filled out for you. You'll have to put in your name. Here I've put in the simulation number, although that would also be populated for you. In this case, 40060. The highest score I have achieved in my basically it took me 3 attempts to achieve that high score. And it talks about basically repeats the rubric scoring right here. Let's look at these two documents here. On the left is a simulation activity report that comes out of the Blackboard classroom where you are to report your task-based simulation activity. Here it shows the highest score, 91%, took 3 attempts to complete it. Now, this information comes from, again, remember the completed sessions log. And again, you can see here, I had 3 attempts to complete it, and here's my score of 90.9%, and I rounded it up to 91%. So you can see how the completed sessions log corresponds to the weekly activity report. Now, the weekly activity report is you should save this to your computer, and then you're going to submit that activity report in the classroom under your submit your task-based simulation assignment page here. And you'll notice down here you will attach that file, that activity report, and then you will find it on your computer, browse your computer, and once you found it, you'll go ahead and select that item, and then you will go ahead and submit it. And of course, what you want to do is also make sure that when you submit it, it is actually submitted and on file in the system. I can't grade what I don't see. Okay, another thing is if you want to add comments or whatever to me, you can do that in the activity area down here or whatever. And with that, that is the end of this presentation, and thank you for your patience.